that we don't need the voice in our head because there are lots of people who have awakened out of it. And they pretty much ignore the voice in their head. They're not living as if they are that voice. They're living as if they are the divine self. And that's what awakening is about. It's about living as your true self. Because the truth is that you have always been here. Your true self has always been here. It's the only thing that is experiencing life. It's the only thing that is aware. And so if your true self wasn't here in the midst of life, it's not some higher self off in some other dimension. Your true self is here. It's moving my arms. It's allowing the speech to come forward. It's attending to the speech. It's curious about what's going to be said next. So it's right here and now, looking at your eyes, listening from your ears, and using your body and senses to have this experience that you're having right now. That's real. That's who you really are. And you don't need the thoughts about me, myself, and I in order to get by in this world. And that is an amazing thing, but it takes a while before you trust that and you know that for yourself. So spiritual teachings lay out the ground and they show you what is true and what isn't true, why you suffer, and how to get out of suffering. And this is critical information because without that information, where do you start? You're believing false beliefs. So how do you, it's like trying to punch yourself out of a paper bag. You just, you don't have the right tools. You don't have the right belief system to get out of that paper bag. So the spiritual beliefs are pointers. They're saying, wait a minute, take a look. Take a look at your egoic mind. Take a look at what's real and what's keeping you from being happy, from being at peace, from being the loving person that you can be. Because this true self is your very best self. And everybody has a really good self, a really good, very best true self. Everybody does. But people are more or less detached from it. They more or less allow that true self to move in their life. And so what happens is, here we have a body mind, right? And if you're listening to the voice in your head almost all the time, you're just going to march to that drummer. The voice in your head says, do this, do that. Oh, you're late. Oh, this isn't good. Hurry up. And it creates a lot of stress and it orchestrates your life for you. It gives you a to-do list. It tells you exactly when to do it, how to do it, and whether you're doing it well enough. You all know what I'm talking about. So that's one way of living, and that's the way most people live. But of course, there are always times when the true self breaks through and it comes in and it lives life. And those are often considered peak moments or moments of love, moments of peace, moments when we're just relaxed and finally content, just content with things as they are. We're in the present moment. And then also, many of us do learn to have that true self move us in life without thought. We move intuitively. We just feel driven to pick up that phone and call somebody, to take that book off the shelf and read it, to do things that support love and peace and goodness and the spiritual purpose, the life purpose that everyone is here to accomplish. Everyone has a purpose, and we're all being guided from deep within ourselves to fulfill that purpose. And when we do, we're happy. So the true self is working to fulfill that purpose, and it's guiding us. We're being guided to do the things that we need to do to fulfill that purpose. So everyone is acting as their true self to one extent or another. Some are very lost to it and very little involved with the goodness, the peace, the compassion, the sensitivity, the intuitive ability, and the loving nature of the true self. And but there are many who are living primarily as that. And that is what awakening is. It's when we finally have shifted out of that default of the ego to a new default, which is the true self. And so it doesn't mean that we wouldn't necessarily slip back into ego sometime, but once we're awakened, or once we've spent a lot of time, once we're spending most of our time in presence, we're not going to stay in the ego for very long, and it's not going to influence our behavior for very long before we might say, oops, sorry, to somebody that we might have slipped, a judgment might have slipped out or something like that. Or a judgment might have crossed the mind and you might have dwelled on it for a moment. And then you just realize, oh, I got caught. And you forgive yourself and you move on. So, awakened people are not perfect. They do not vanquish the ego forever. But it is so much easier to see what the ego's up to and for it to not be the prominent thing in one's life. In fact, after awakening, I guess I would describe my experience after awakening is that the voice in my head seemed like it wasn't mine, like it was a radio station, a very bad radio station in the background, and like it didn't belong to me. It wasn't really, it wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I thought. It wasn't what I believed. And when you can get to that point where there's enough detachment from that voice to see the truth of it, you wonder why you didn't see it sooner, because the voice in your head is so negative and has so little truth to it and is so silly. But unfortunately, our media, movies and TV and all, give voice to the voice in people's heads. Sometimes we call that comedy. We think it is funny when people are so involved in the voice in their head that they say such ridiculous things, because so much of what goes through the voice in your head is ridiculous, and comedians do show us that, and so do certain sitcoms and dramas that we see the ego playing out in the trouble it gets itself into. And in some respects that can be useful to see it from afar, but in many respects it's continuing to program that as normal to us. So what we feed ourselves in the media is important. It's very, very useful for spiritual teachings to be repeated, to listen and read spiritual teachings repeatedly, because the deprogramming of the ego is accomplished through repetition. And that repetition is repetition of the truth. So it's important to know what the truth is. So that's the role of spiritual teachings.